Welcome to Creativity in Focus, a live video podcast where every week we interview an artist, talk about art, and see, I found you. And we also talk about the business side of art. Isn't that cool? Today we have a very special guest, but before we go there, I have a few announcements for you. Actually, more requests than announcements. If you're watching this right at the beginning while we are live, can you please take a second and share this video? This video is content only. We are not going to sell or promote anything, so you are safe to share on groups, you're safe to share on your profile, whatever you want. And if you're watching this in any of the social media platforms, please give us a like or hearts or whatever they offer there. Give us, as long as it's positive. And we really appreciate that, because that's how social media platforms decide if they show a video to more people or not. So by taking that extra second makes a huge difference for us. And we can keep coming every week and talking to you about art. The other thing is, we are live for a very good reason. We love interaction and we love questions. So wherever you're watching, there is either a chat box or a comment box below the video or beside the video. We are in many different places, so look for that comment box or chat box wherever you're watching, and that's the right place for you to submit a comment or a question to my special guest. And I am 100% sure that you are going to have some very good questions for her, because the topic is very exciting. It's about growth mindset. How do we move ahead in whatever you are doing? You may be an artist that you do this just for yourself, or you're a hobbyist in your art, or you want to take it to the next step and create a business around that. And whatever you are, of course, you hit some blocks every now and then, right? It's not as easy as sometimes people portray that to you, because you can be your best friend or your best enemy. So sometimes we block ourselves from things. This is the topic today, and I think, for me at least, it's extremely exciting. My guest today is business breakthrough specialist Annette Pieper. Welcome, Annette.
Thanks, Shahar. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes,
hello, everyone.
Yeah. So, Annette, I've known you for many years, but for those that are seeing you for the first time, tell me a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, thanks for that question. I am a business breakthrough specialist, as Shahar said. I do a lot of things with businesses. So I teach them how to, first of all, get out of their own way. Because anytime you're growing a business or you're trying to grow in anything in life, you usually sabotage yourself in that growth process. So the first thing I like to do is help people get out of their own way. And then from there, we can work on the strategies that they can implement into their life so that they can move in the direction they want to go. And most of the time it's going hand in hand. You're doing both at the same time, because you take a strategy, you move forward, and then you hit a block. And then you have to do some of the self-sabotage, the mindset work, so you can get through that block and keep moving forward. I love what I do. I've been doing this kind of work, business coaching, mindset coaching, lifestyle and fitness coaching, since 2002. So it really is my passion and my purpose in life to help people get to where they want to go.
So let's talk about, how do you get where you want to go? And again, we all are moving many times in different directions, right? I just want to follow a passion, or I want to go into business, and I don't know. And it's very easy to blame the outside, right? The economy is not good enough, or people don't have money, or whatever excuse you want to find for that. And don't get me wrong, there are many things that you need to take care. For example, the marketing piece, if you're going into business, that cannot be left alone. But most of the time, Annette, is like you said, we move a little bit and we stop, or even worse, right? We move a little bit and then it looks like we are going backwards. Why does that happen?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to have clarity. You've really got to get intentional and discover, where exactly is where I want to go. What's that place? Is it, I want to make this much money in my business. I want to sell this many pieces of art. I want to find a new relationship. You've got to get very clear on what it is that you're working towards, because growth is intentional. I mean, we grow unintentionally sometimes. Life throws something at us and we're forced to grow, but it's much easier to grow when we're intentional rather than being hit upside the head with the cosmic 2x4 and being forced to grow. So first is clarity and really getting clear where we want to go. And you are going to have 2 steps forward, 1 step back. What you want to avoid is 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Because that doesn't keep you going forward at all. So guys, write that down because you will want to remember this. Even though this podcast stays wherever you're watching and you can rewatch as many times as you want. But the first step is having clarity. And write this nugget down. Growth is intentional. I think that's very important because a lot of, my sister, for example, she has her Skype account and you can put a saying there. And one thing she puts there, has been there for years, letting life take me. And you have no clue how much that saying doesn't jive with me. Because I have a thing, I love the mind as I know you do. We both study mind and behavior a lot. But it's this thing that allowing things to happen to you instead of you, being responsible and doing what you have to do to get someplace. Do you agree with that or not?
I absolutely agree with that. And even when life happens to you, you still are responsible for your response there. It's called responsibility. And so you are responsible for that result, how you take what happened in your life and what you make of it. You can be a victim or you can be a victor. And so it's up to you. And then again, it's clarity. Something happens in life, you're not moving forward. You got some big financial bill that showed up out of nowhere and hit you upside the head. You respond to it. Sure, you can have your little victim moment. Everybody needs to have a
little
pity
bit,
party.
right? Because we need a hug.
Yeah, I always say, it's okay to have a pity party. Just don't set up your tents and stake it down and invite your friends and family. You just, give yourself 5 minutes to rant and rave and, get upset and then decide what you want instead, how you want to deal with it, where you want to go, so that you can start moving forward from that situation.
We have Charlotte here, and she's an amazing weaver, by the way, and she's saying hi. And don't forget, guys, you have a chat box or a comment box, wherever you're watching. Use this really to consult with Annette, right? Because sometimes one little thing that we can get from an expert can change how we behave on everything. I remember I have a good friend that we talk every week, and the other day we were talking about responsibility, and he was saying, you are responsible for 100% of things that happen in your life. And I went, oh yeah, sure, because I got hit the other day by 2 cars in the back, and you're going to say, I am responsible for that. I was hit, I didn't hit anybody. And he said, oh yes, because you could have chosen the other lane, but you didn't. And why this conversation was important to me is that if I take responsibility about everything that happens in my life, I can change things. But if it's somebody else's fault, then it's not on me, so I don't have to change. And people are resistant to change, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We get in what's called our familiar zone. I don't like to call it the comfort zone because a lot of times we're not comfortable there at all. We're miserable, but we're familiar. It's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And so we are resistant to change because change takes us out of that familiar zone or out of our comfort zone, and we have to do something different than what we're doing. We don't know what the results of that are going to be. But we know the results of what's going on, even if it sucks.
Yes.
So we don't want to change.
We are familiar when it sucks, and we are used to that. We're familiar to say, that's okay. I know how to navigate this.
Yeah,
right?
we know how to manage that.
Yes. Isn't that sad?
It's very
because we
sad.
all do that, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to create some exercise, some rituals for yourself in order to get out of that.
You do.
Yeah, but you said you talked about change, and during lunch today we were talking. Nashla and I were talking about how we see how people. It seems to us that they are less and less proactive when they face a problem. It's like there is a problem in front of you, and you. I don't know what to do. Somebody rescue me. Do you see that as well, or do you live in a different world?
No, I see it as well. But the problem is when we don't handle that problem. When we see the problem and we just kind of ignore it and hope it goes away, that's when the cosmic 2x4 comes in and hits us upside the head, and we're forced to deal with it. And it's usually a lot worse than if we would have dealt with it in the first place. So as an example, you're in a relationship that there's a problem with the relationship, and instead of confronting that, you kind of ignore it, kind of skirt around it, maybe have a few fights about it, and then all of a sudden it's a major disaster in your relationship, divorce, whatever.
And now you have to deal with that.
Yeah, so now you have to deal with the big stuff, when maybe if you would have dealt with it while it was small and not been afraid and resisted that, then it probably could have been solved.
I have Charlotte saying, great topic. Terry saying hi. And Gabby saying, but how do we leave that familiar zone when we are stuck in it? Great question.
You know what? That's where getting a coach comes in really handy, because it's hard to move forward on your own. It takes a lot of energy. It's like when you launch a rocket or a missile, all the energy is in the takeoff. Once you're in the air, then you're just kind of guiding along, but that takeoff takes a lot of energy. So it's great to have a support system and someone that can kind of guide you through the changes, and also call you on your stuff when they catch you being stuck, because we can't see our own blind spots. And so it's helpful to have someone that can guide us through that.
And you were also emotionally involved, right?
Exactly.
And that doesn't help you. It's like if you watch any TV show with cops, for example. If the cop gets emotionally involved, he knew who was murdered or something, the first thing they do is remove that cop from the case, right? Because if you're too emotionally involved with something you cannot see clearly, and your first step was clarity, right? But what if I can't afford a coach? What can I do?
Well, there's a lot of free resources online. I mean, you can Google just about anything, or, do a web search and find just about anything online and get started that way. Watch videos. But the first thing you need to do is, when you find you're stuck, is you've got to make the decision to get unstuck. You got to draw a line in the sand. You got to say, okay, I'm done with this, no more. Because otherwise you'll just kind of skirt around it, and you don't get serious about it. So a decision has to be made. Am I going to stay where I'm at and just, be miserable, or live with whatever it is I've got? Or am I going to change? And so it starts with a decision. Everything always starts with a decision and a commitment to change.
So we have clarity, decision, and commitment as the steps that you have to write down. And don't forget, growth is intentional, right? It's not just going to happen to us.
Exactly. So as an example, my son smokes and he wants to stop smoking. And he's like, why does it have to be so hard? And the reason it's so hard is he's resisting quitting. He wants to quit, but he's resisting the discomfort he's going to experience going without the cigarettes. And I said to him, it comes to just making that decision to do it, committing to do it no matter what. And once you make that commitment, and you're much more likely not to fall backwards into the habit. But the pain actually comes in the resistance. Once you move through that resistance and step on the other side, it's the unknown, you don't know what's going to happen, but once you've stepped over that threshold, then all that pain from the resistance, all that avoidance that just makes you mentally nuts, disappears, and you are stepping forward in your life, and it's so much better.
And the resistance it is also your brain, because it wants you, for you, the brain wants you safe, and safe is whatever situation you're in. Nashla uses a great analogy, and I actually think she learned that from you, that she said that our brain is much like the thermostat we have at home. You program at the beginning of each season, let's say you put at 72 degrees, and then it may get a little colder, but what happens? As it gets cold, it triggers the thermostat and it goes up again, or vice versa, right? So we tend to behave like that too. we are set in that 72. We try something new. We try a diet, right? That example is very clear in itself. Comes December, you start a diet. Comes March, diet is over, because actually you're going to go back to what you know it's normal for you. Correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
I have a few more comments here, Gabby. I like that. The pain comes on the resistance. So let's write that down too. This thought process helped me to commit. And committing, I think, is really crucial to allow any change in our lives, right? I'm going to stick to this no matter what.
Whenever I make a change in my life and I talk about that commitment, I actually sign a contract for myself, because there's something about a contract and signing your name. I mean, just think about when you sign a contract to buy a home or to buy a car. Once you sign your name, it's a done deal. So write yourself a contract and sign your name to it and date it and hang it where you can see it.
I think that's a fantastic idea, because we tend to be very critical with everybody, right? If somebody tells you, I'm going to do this, you expect them to do that on a certain date. But when it comes to us, we bring all these excuses that it's okay to not do it. But if we treat, no, I signed my contract with myself, so I have to respect that, it changes everything.
Exactly, because when you don't respect that contract, when you dishonor that contract, it drains your energy. It drains your psychic energy, it drains your physical energy, because you know that you're
cheating on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Terry Morrison is saying, a coach also has your best interest in mind. They want to see you be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the beauty of coaching. If you're not successful, a coach isn't successful. No. So they absolutely have your best interest in mind. They want to see you move forward.
There is the analogy that you have the what's the term for that? It's like the black spot. There is a certain part of yourself that you don't see. So it's like bad breath. You're the last person to notice you have that, right?
Exactly.
And we all have that. So we need a pair of fresh eyes to be able to pinpoint what you cannot see.
Exactly. I call it the blind spot. You know, when you're driving down the street and you go to change lanes and you start moving over and there's a car that was in your blind spot that you didn't see. We all have that. We have this blind spot right here, habits, behaviors, attitudes that we don't see because it's our zone. It's what we're comfortable with. Yet it may be stopping us from moving forward. So this is where a coach or an accountability partner, and you got to find the right person. You got to find someone that's willing to call you on your stuff. There's a lot of people that are afraid of conflict, and so they'll just tell you what they think they want you to hear, which doesn't help you move forward. You need someone to say, hey, wait a minute, that's a bunch of crap.
That's why I loved being a consultant. No, really, because you see things, they're not, with us it was always the same process. They would come thinking they needed marketing or social media, but when you start talking, you see all the other kinds of problems that need to come first, but they couldn't see. And then you call them on that. It's always fun from this side, for sure. Now, tell me one thing. Before we go into the to-do, what can we do to change that? We know we sabotage ourselves. We know we hit blocks all the time, but I don't think we are always aware of the potential we have as human beings. And I know you gave a course on Curious Mondo called Be the Miracle. So tell me a little bit about the potential we have that we also leave in the blind spot many times.
Yeah, well, we all have this great, great potential buried deep inside of us. And sometimes it's not buried. Maybe it's just right there on the surface, or maybe we're already tapping into that potential. But somewhere in our childhood, we were programmed to stay small, to not be big, to not, don't brag, don't be boisterous. Who do you think you are?
Yes.
So we've had all of these things said to us by well-meaning people that had our best interest in mind, but they were only doing what they were programmed to do. And so it's like a software program that's running in the back of our mind all the time. But software program can be changed. It can be
rewritten.
It can be downloaded, a new software program implanted in place. So there's a lot of tools that you can incorporate to start to install new programs into that software and replace some of that old conditioning. And it's not just things that people have said to us, it comes from experience. You know, maybe we fell down on the playground and some people were laughing at us,
yeah.
and so we started to get a complex and thinking we weren't, you know, good enough, and, you know, everybody's laughing at me. You know, it's amazing what our perceptions are of these meaningless little teeny events that
they keep awake
define our
night.
lives.
Yes, yes. And you know, Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a play, and one of the crucial lines on that play was that hell is really the eyes of the other, right? Because we give so much importance to that, and the fault is on us. Right? We give a lot of importance in what people think and what they say, and many comes from, you know, being bullied and things like that. But you have to understand it can become hell if you live your life trying to belong to the group. And I think this will jive a lot with artists, because sometimes it's better not to belong to a specific group, or find your own group in a different way.
Exactly. And another thing on that line is when we're worried about what other people think of us, you know, that other person, they're not really thinking about you because they're worried about what other people are thinking about them. So
yeah, so it's like a dead end, really.
It is. And so be yourself, be confident in who you are, develop those confidence skills, and don't worry about what other people are thinking. You know, it's that saying, what you think of me and it's none of my business. Because it really isn't. You can't change someone's perception of you. They have to change it themselves.
Yeah, that's a lost battle, right? Trying to prove you're not what you think they think you are.
Exactly.
You don't even know. You're not even sure. And you talked about programming and how we were programmed. We are really programmed in a very tender age, right? I think it's up to 5 years old, if I'm not wrong.
It's between birth, well, I think starts in the womb because our brain's already forming, to about 8 years old. And about 8 years old is when our unconscious mind is formed at that time. So everything comes into our unconscious mind, and our conscious mind starts developing at age 8. And, you know, it's usually developed by age 13. So that's when we start, that filter comes in when somebody says something to us, or we see something, or we witness something, and we think, ooh, you know what, that doesn't make sense. You know, I think I'm going to question that. But prior to that, everything comes in and goes right into the unconscious mind, which has no filter. So we just take it in as truth.
Yes.
And then it's buried deep in there. And so we've got to make that decision to start, you know, recognizing when we're acting in a conditioned way or a programmed way.
And we have to police ourselves too when we are dealing with children as parents or grandparents, because exactly when you say, oh, you're silly or you're stupid, and those things will sediment in that kid, and well, then they might be 20 years from now watching a podcast saying, how do I get out of that? And you add that to the fact that we go to school, and nothing against school and education. I'm a big proponent of education, but it was created during the Industrial Revolution, right? To make people to go into factories. So it's a cookie cutter thing. It needs to change, and to a point it is changing, but we need to be aware that most of us grew up thinking, if you're in my generation, you really grew up hearing your parents saying, get a good job, and a good job was either being a doctor or working in a bank and stayed there for 20 years. Right? That's how we were programmed. Just do what you have to do. Don't question anything.
Yep.
And then when we find ourselves like creative souls and creating and getting out of the box, we also see ourselves moving backwards all the time because we are fighting with that child that learned that, right?
Exactly. And I do want to add one more thing to
Sure.
that. Not all of our programming is bad. Sometimes in the self-help, in the personal development field, you know, it sounds like all of our programming is bad, but it's not. You know, be kind to others, do unto others as you would like to have done unto you. You know, open the door, help the old lady across the street, you know. So there's a lot of programming that we got that is good. What we want to focus on is the stuff that's holding us back and moving forward with that.
Fantastic. Gabby is saying, I feel like sometimes my art is stunted because of what I think the others will think.
what do you think they're going to think?
That
Do
is
you
not good,
do
that
you
is-
like your art? Are you getting enough feedback from your art that other people think it's okay? And what do you think of it? It's a creative expression of yourself. That's the first and foremost thing that should matter. It's your creative expression. The right people are going to align with what you have.
Great advice. The other day I changed my mind about that. It's all about mindset, right? Because Gabby, me too. I used to start creating, always thinking, would people buy this? I mean, I have a business mindset I can't avoid. But the funny part is, I rarely put anything I create to sell because I don't even have the time. But my mindset was always, would they buy? So worried about them. Until a few months ago, we interviewed Judy Elsley. She's a local artist. And we were talking about going, as artists, going to multiple things. You do sculpting one day, fiber the other, and you blame yourself. You feel guilty that you're doing that. And she said, it really doesn't matter. It's how you chose to tell your story today. So today you chose to tell a story quilting, the next day with whatever. And I took that at heart because now when I start creating, I really the starting point is, how will I tell my story today? What is my story today? Today I'm feeling sad. Something happened. And I'm going to express that. So I took the others out of the picture. And it changed everything. It did change. Now, and I have more pleasure now doing, because I'm not really thinking, would they buy if I mix green and blue? It doesn't matter anymore. Today, my story is green and blue. That's what's going to be. I don't care what people say.
I love that. I love that. That's a great way to just start off your day. What's the story I'm going to create today?
Yeah, fantastic.
And just go from there. Is it, like yesterday, my story was I had a migraine headache, and that was, that's what I had to deal with. And
the dark room was cozy. It was cold outside.
I did the bits and pieces that I could do yesterday, and that was the story I created. And by evening, it was over. And today's been a rock star day for me. So it was a whole different story today.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to live by, because we take the guilt out of the picture as well, right? We spend the day blaming ourselves. I didn't say that right. I didn't look this way to the camera. I looked at the wrong... Wow, I do that all day. Oh, I looked at the wrong camera. The problem is, when we get into this habit, we go home and we go to sleep and we're still thinking about the camera.
Yeah, we're still rewinding everything in our mind, which is torture.
Torture ourselves. Gabby's saying, love it. I choose to tell my story through my art. Exactly. And, believe that as an artist, you're impacting the world. Even if you make one person smile or cry, you're changing somebody's life. So it's way more important than you might think when you're creating. Patty Palazzi, Burry, I am happy what I do with the tutorials I watch, but I have a hard time visualizing my own ideas. Any suggestions?
Visualizing can be really tricky, and for some people are really great at visualizing. What I like to do, and I don't know if this will work for you or not, but I like to cut out pictures like on a vision board of examples of things that I want to create. Maybe you could put like colors and designs. And I get on a mini tramp and jump, kind of dance around on a power song, and I have my eyes wide open looking at what's on my vision board, because sometimes I can't go into a visualization. I visualize with my eyes wide open, and the song, this is my jam, is from The Greatest Showman, the song Dreaming with Your Eyes Wide Open, or Come Alive, and it says, I'm dreaming with my eyes wide open. That's what I have to do sometimes, because closing my eyes and trying to visualize, sometimes it's really hard for me. So that vision board and bringing in the colors and sights and things that I want to create, and then doing some body movement on the mini tramp with the power song, that's what does it for me.
Puts you up, yeah, and it does. Now, you mentioned visualizing, and you also mentioned saying I choose to tell my story at the beginning of the day. So let's go about what to do, things that we can implement in our lives. So you mentioned, I think one good point is not everybody goes with the same thing. You said you have a hard time visualizing. I have a terrible time meditating. But so I've been going towards hypnotist. And I also, I don't know if you ever heard of that paraliminals. It's a type of meditation with two voices that goes well with all the voices in my head. But it's important to see what works for you, because even when you go into the to-dos, it may not resonate with you specifically, so you find your version of that.
Exactly. And for some people, meditation is sitting there and breathing, and they're good to be there. For some people, it has to be a guided meditation because they can't be left alone with their own thought process.
No, it's very
They've got
dangerous.
to have someone guide them through, and that's perfect too. And there's a whole lot of apps that you can download on your phone with little meditation things. And for some people, meditation is a movie meditation. It's a walk or doing some yoga poses, or you have to find what works for you. There is no cookie cutter approach to growth and success. You find out what other people are doing, you try things on yourself, you create your own systems, what works for you, you share it with other people, let them take the pieces that work for them. And
yeah, we have, in the process of respecting ourselves, we need to respect how we behave as humans, right? And sometimes, for example, for me, quantum physics, having a scientific reason behind something that I do matters a lot. That's why I like to study neuroscience quite a bit, because I understand I can train my brain into something different. My sister, for example, we were talking the other day on the phone, and she agrees with everything I say, but her take is karma or something more holistic, or another line of thought. We both like the same thing, just for different reasons, right? So she believes in a lot of things I don't care about, but then I say, well, what really matters is that I can track this and say, see, it's the same thing, but my personality is different than hers. My brain works in a different way, so I have to find my line, which is very similar to others, but that makes sense to me.
absolutely, absolutely.
Patty's saying, oh, I already visualizing this, so I already read that. So let's go to the to-dos. What are a few things I can incorporate in my day that would help me stop self-sabotage and move forward?
Well, first of all, I'd find some affirmations that work for you. Create your own affirmations, whatever it is that you want to create.
Tell me yours.
So I have pages and pages of affirmations. I keep a gratitude journal, and every morning I write 5 things that I'm grateful for, and 5 things I'm grateful for that I haven't manifested yet, but I know they're on the way. Okay. So, and I act as if they're in present tense, as is I've already created them. So I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm making, $40,000 per month with ease and grace, right? So writing affirmations are a great way to start your day, and a gratitude journal. But I would say first of all, get clear on where you want to go, and then set the intention to discover when or to be notified, be conscious of when you are sabotaging yourself. So if you say, okay, I want to know when I'm going into a negative thought pattern, and just, alert me when that shows up. And so you're wandering around your house, you're doing things, and you hear, you're bitching in the background and stuff, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm in a negative thought pattern. Recognition is the first step to change. You can't change anything you don't recognize. So by setting that intention and then having that recognition show up, that's the first thing. And then have little strategies to move past that. So when I teach in the Be the Miracle program, I call miracle mode. And it's just when I catch myself in that place, I just go miracle mode. And what it does is it changes your state just like that. So you can, that's another state change. Sometimes
break
like
the pattern,
snap out of it.
Yeah.
And so miracle mode, snap out of it. You can have an elastic on your wrist and flip yourself because something about pain makes you want to change.
Pain is usually not a good message.
But you want to have something that breaks that state that you're in, and then you ask yourself a powerful question. What do I want instead? What do I want to think instead? What do I want to experience instead?
Is it valid to also ask why you go into that mode so often? For example, complaining. We have a rule here. You don't complain. I hate that. Nashla hates that. But I understand that a lot of people complain because they get attention, right? If you're complaining about your day, everything that is happening in your life, all the ailments in your body, it's more likely that you will get somebody, oh, poor thing, right? And pay more attention to you.
Then you get the sympathy.
So you get the sympathy and you reinforce that behavior.
Exactly.
So you need to be aware.
And
right?
so
the reason why.
Yeah, so one thing that I like to share with people is, you know, setting the intention and then having the state change and stuff. That's a great way to change in the moment, because it's not always the right time to sit down and contemplate on why you do something.
Let me see why I do this.
But I like journaling, especially first thing in the morning. That's when I'm freshest, but some people like to do it at night. And that's where you ask yourself those questions. What is the root cause of my complaining? Where did that come from? Was that something that was conditioned in me? What do I want to do instead? How do I want to behave instead? So you might not be able to do it in that moment that you catch yourself, but just then make the commitment with yourself that you're going to do some journaling later on about what the root cause is of that. Because sometimes when we go, oh man, why am I so complaining all the time? That why question can sometimes send us back into victim mode.
Yes, I agree. You know, one thing I do, and I think it has helped me a lot, and it's part of what you said, I'm going to tell you a secret. So I used to have this type of dream all the time, that there was something related to money happening that I couldn't control. It was really years of my life I would dream about that, and that really drained my energy. It was not about if in real life I was paying my bills or not. It was the constant fear. And then I think I listened to your program right here, and I started doing the gratitude. I do in a different way. I do at night, right when I go to bed, and I say out loud 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened that day. Cannot be, oh, I'm grateful I was born. No, they have to happen that day. And when something is bugging me about why do I do this, or I do ask, how can I do this different that will produce whatever result I'm looking for. I've been doing this, I would say, for 3 to 4 years. Never once again I dreamt about money, and I'm so happy, right? Because as much as, yes, I like the money part, I also want to sleep without having to think about it. And it was just that thing about reminding ourselves that we need to be grateful, right? And forcing yourself. And in the morning, what I've been doing is I really talk, 3 things that I expect from that day. Because it would be very easy to just wake up, take my shower, come to a studio, and then deal with whatever, because problems have all the time. Technology is by the second, right? But then you would set up in that mode of just solving, putting the fire out and not enjoying not having fires, for example.
Right. Well, and I really like that you do the how question instead of the why question, because the why question, like I said, can sometimes dig us back into our past, and do we really need to go there? Do we really need to know where that started, or how can I do this differently? How can I behave differently? How can I, change my habit? So how-to questions are power questions. Why questions, like I said, can kind of lead us down a rabbit hole of victimhood. Well, it was my parents' fault. It was,
and then so the blame is on somebody else, right?
Instead of
write that down.
How questions.
How questions, because they are
power questions.
Power questions. So
or empowering questions.
Empowering questions. That's very important, because it's very easy. Because this happened to me when I was young, and then I'm a victim, so I don't have nothing to do about it.
Exactly.
Right?
And the unconscious mind loves questions. And so when you ask a question to your unconscious mind, you're going to get an answer. It might not pop up right in that second, but it's going to pop up eventually. You're going to get an answer to that question.
I truly believe in that. Paul is asking, I sometimes struggle with pricing my artwork accordingly. It's often lower than it probably should be. I feel like that is a reflection of how I see myself as an artist. Thoughts on how I can change this? Price is a common issue.
It is. What's the worst thing that could happen if you raise your price?
Well, I can tell you, because we have applied this in consulting many times. And it was such a struggle to get the idea through the client, right? Because we come with the normal excuses. Oh, that's not how much the market is, or that guy that does the same thing I do charges this much. Nobody's going to buy. What tends to happen is when you increase the price, not only you will get more clients, they will be better clients. And 90% of the time, unless you're just hiking the price because. Right?
Exactly. And you've got to discover the value of your art within yourself and what that's going to bring to the person that buys that, and then be able to let them know that, be able to put that in your marketing, be able to, when you're having a conversation with them, let them know how that's going to beautify their home. Or
what's the real reason they're buying,
Exactly. And kind of walk them through visualizing how that's going to set up in their space. You know, rather than this is the price, you got to almost paint a picture for them.
Yep. Well, I think we always do have to paint a picture for them, because and understand that what we create, where is the uniqueness of that? Like you said, what is really going to do for them? I don't know what you make, Paul, but let's assume you paint. You're not selling a paint, right? You may be selling status, you may be selling an emotion. So on an emotional level, what are you really selling to them? Because if we look at our things and we put them in a commodity, it's a paint, it's a sculpture, well, what's the value of that? But what you bring when people put your piece in their home, what's the story you're trying to tell with that piece? Right? If I grew up, my father was a painter, and he had a gallery, and I used to help him sell because I like selling. But the thing was exactly telling the story of the painting and not about the painting, these colors, or what was the idea when he painted that?
Exactly. And people love stories, and it's, you know, there's a whole thing in marketing about creating a movement, which is all about the story behind the brand. It's the story behind the brand and how you're putting it out there into the world to inspire other people. And that's the same thing with your art. There's a story behind what you created, and that's what you got to share with people, is what that story is, and value that story, and know that they're going to value that story.
And that's a good thing, a good exercise, right? To really sit down and start thinking, what's the story behind what I do? Paul doesn't sell art, Shahar doesn't sell courses. It's way beyond that.
Exactly.
Right? But you need to be able to define what it is exactly. So in a Curious Mondo, we went for conquering new possibilities, because I do believe that possibilities are the most empowering thing we can bring into our lives, right? The moment you have a possibility of something different, you can fly. So that's what we sell. They are courses in the medium they are created, right? But what we are selling is possibilities in your life.
Absolutely. And you know, another thing I want to say on pricing is start small. You don't have to like jump your price up huge, just tweak it up a little bit and get comfortable with that, and then tweak it up a little bit more. And see what happens. But if you don't do it, you'll never know.
Yeah. True. I'm quiet because I'm thinking it is so true. Price is so difficult, actually, because we put variables that sometimes are not important. The most important thing is believe that what you do is valuable to other people, and then price accordingly to that value, and not what medium you use. You can make something out of paper, and you can sell for hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, but you have to have the purpose of that piece.
Exactly.
Patty Palassi saying, love that advice. Terry saying, I wish my inner dialogue was in a foreign language. You should live one day in my mind with at least 3 languages inside. Charlotte saying, yes, how, not why. And Maria Jose is asking, okay, I'm very good at 2 things. My job and art, love them both. Art is my second passion. But I think I could be so much better if I dedicated more time to it. I'm just scared to earn less. It is always frightening to take a chance and do what you love. I have been offered the chance to work more time on my current job. That means earning more. Hard choice. Also have an issue on pricing my pieces of art.
Wow. Those are a couple of
very good questions
very
here.
good questions. And so when it comes to, do you take the more time in your job and less time in your art, you just got to do some inner work and ask yourself, what's going to suit me best? What's going to feed my soul? If I take more time in my business, in my job, which I also love, and I'm not doing as much art, how is that going to affect my life? Is this temporary or is it permanent? Yeah, is it going to upset the balance? Am I going to, and sometimes you don't know if it's going to make you unhappy or not till you try it. But doing the inner work first and really thinking about how is this going to affect my life if I choose this. Sometimes what's fun to do is just kind of draw an imaginary line on the floor, or you can put a line on the floor and step on one side, and that's the side where you step into the more time with your job and less time in your art, and just sit with it, see how it feels. And then step back over the line to where you are now and see how that feels. And just trust your gut.
I love to trust your gut kind of style. I also think it is dangerous to go and say, oh, I'm going to do what I love, because that's the right thing to do, when you know beforehand that that's going to be the excuse. I try what I love, and it didn't work. If you jump to the other side where there is insecurity, for example, leaving a job to go do only art, you have to go prepared and have to be willing to do everything that it takes in the process. You have a business, I have a business, and you know that it's just not doing what we love, right? There's a lot of doing what we hate as well. Things that you don't like to do, but you have to do. So I am a firm believer that I only live once. So I go for things that, if I don't have joy in the process, you've known me for 10 years, you know that. If I don't have joy in the process, I'm not going to do it. I really don't do it, because I don't think I have a second chance to try this again. But I always go prepared, and I know you too. You take tons of courses. You have prepared yourself. We've been on this journey together for a while, right?
Absolutely.
You're always learning. You're always getting ready. And I know you do a lot of stuff that you don't like to do, but you have to do.
Right. And I always say, starting a business is not for the faint of heart.
No.
Not at all. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you do need to be prepared, and you got to make sure that that's exactly where you want to go. But I would do, what I would do is I'd do it as a side hustle first while you have security. And if you want to change into that full time, work on the side hustle and build it up first before you leave your day job.
Totally agree. And you need to know your personality. If you are a personality that you need safety, you need security, you have to think 10 times before jumping into doing just art, because there is no security in having a business. And doing art full time, it is a business too, if you're making money out of that. So you don't have that, right? There is no certain date for a paycheck. You don't even know if you're going to have a paycheck.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so you have to be careful in that arena. With that said, if your passion is there, get ready, get prepared, and move full force.
Because there's a lot of joy in owning your own business and doing what you love. But if you love your job and you love doing art, why leave?
Yeah.
If you love what you're doing, just make sure you have a balance between the two so that you can love both of them equally and you don't get out of that equilibrium.
Yes, true. One last question, because I know you have to go. Diane Kelly is saying, what to do when you price items at a good price, but they don't sell, but you see the same item, but it's not well made and sell for a much higher price?
Well, that's where you have to adjust your marketing, your conversation that you have with people, and show them the value and compare other, comparison can be very powerful in the marketing world. Compare what you're seeing out there in the market and it's not well made, and you've got to show them why they should purchase your product. You've got to inspire them to purchase your product.
So would you agree with me that the problem probably here is in the story? Right? You're not telling the story right. And many times you're not conveying what's the purpose of what you are creating. And that really kills this. There are many things that could kill a sale, but these are two of them. Tom Shoes, for example, is a great example that he makes those shoes. Those shoes in South America are everywhere. You grow up with those things, and they're not the most beautiful pair of shoes you're going to own, but it has a purpose, it has a cause. You don't have to have a cause, but in that case, it has. And that made Tom Shoes become what it became. But then they changed their strategy, and he started comparing himself, or the company, to other shoemakers. And that start plummeting the company down. So be careful when you have somebody doing something with less value in your perception and comparing, because that's usually a very tricky road. I wish at Curious Mondo I could compare Curious Mondo with everything else out there that I think is inferior, but that would not do me any good.
Exactly. So you create the story that supports...
And you stick to that story, and you create a purpose for that story.
I mean, stories are so powerful. If you pick up a product in a store, like in a grocery store, and the creation story is on the label, you want to buy it, right?
Yes, yes.
Because you feel like you're buying a piece of something meaningful,
and
even if it's a can of soup.
Yeah, exactly. I like a kombucha that comes with the enlightening saying every single time. John Soda, that they would put their own customers on the picture. There's so many examples. And that's the other thing, because you're doing art, you think you're different than every other business. When it comes to the making money part, you're not. So it's a very nice habit to go and study. I do this by nature. Don't tell anybody. I went to a McDonald's today for lunch. That's a no-no in my list. But we were there, a new store that opened, and we were discussing, that's how I spent the time with my daughter, why they put all the tables in the front and not how it usually is. And we found the reason. It's in an area that's not very well attended, so they can keep an eye on everybody that is sitting there while they're sitting. So you have to be studying why other businesses do what they do and see, okay, how can it doesn't matter, one is sandwich and yours is sculpture. What can I adopt from this, correct?
Exactly. There's lessons to learn from every kind of business out there.
Yes, there is.
Absolutely.
Annette, any final words of advice to our folks?
You know, just get clear and be intentional on your growth. Don't leave it to just chance. You know, study, read books, follow experts that you resonate with. Ask your friends who they're listening to, or just go on and, you know, do some web searches on, you know, personal development, self-development, self-sabotage, and see what comes up, and just start listening and developing. And then, you know, most of these things, they give you assignments at the end of the chapter, or, you know, tools and tips that you can use. Start using them. Don't just say, oh, it's a good idea, and then never incorporate anything.
Yes, that's the thing.
You've got to use the tools that they give you and try them on and see what fits, and, you know, then make up your own.
And
don't be afraid to make up your own.
They all feel weird at the beginning, right? Because it's your brain resisting, but stick to the ones you think could help you.
Exactly. And when you find yourself resisting, remember that resistance is keeping you in pain. It's keeping you in the discomfort.
Write that down. Resistance is keeping you in pain. Think about that, because, yeah, that happens so often. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, of course, Annette has some courses on Curious Mondo. Being the Miracle is just one of them. But if people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
They can go to my website at AnnettePieper.com, and remember to spell Piper, P-I-E, just like the yummy dessert. And that's the best place to find me. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook, social media, all over the place.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Shahar. Sharing your knowledge. And guys, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Creativity in Focus. Don't forget, it stays wherever you're watching, so it's a great chance for you not only to rewatch this, but tell your friends about this topic. We all know people that we love a lot, they're boycotting themselves all the time. Come listen. If it only sparks one little change, it starts a process, and that's why we're here for. Next Tuesday at the same time, actually at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Today we did start a little earlier. We'll be here again talking about art, interviewing artists, and inspiring you. So I'll see you back here next Tuesday. Thank you so much.